On this Tuesday night from Weldon, Saskatchewan, a wanted man's history of violence. Myles Sanderson's troubling track record.
I trust that he will be caught.
What his parole board record reveals and why he was freed months ago. Shock and heartache.
It's not the same without West.
The grief and trauma gripping these small communities and trying to solve Canada's healthcare crisis.
You just can't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
A possible controversial prescription.
Global National with Donna Friesen, reporting tonight from Weldon, Saskatchewan.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We are in Weldon, Saskatchewan, a village in a province on edge tonight. The RCMP is still trying to find Myles Sanderson. He's the fugitive wanted in that deadly stabbing spree that unfolded here in this community and the James Smith Cree Nation. 11 people were killed. That includes the wanted man's brother. 18 others are injured. For several hours today, the focus of that manhunt shifted back to the James Smith Cree Nation after reports of a possible sighting there. We have complete coverage tonight. Mike Armstrong is in Regina outside RCMP headquarters. Heather Yourex-West is here in Walden. She just got back from the James Smith Cree Nation. Heather, what happened with that alert?
Yeah, Donna, that alert came out early this afternoon, warning the public that Myles Sanderson had been spotted on the James Smith Cree Nation. Now, we were driving near the Cree Nation around that time and noticed a heavy police presence traveling towards the area, about 15 police vehicles with their sirens on. There was a helicopter overhead. One of the vehicles was a heavily armored vehicle. Some very tense moments. The reserve was put under lockdown for about 2.5 hours. But in the end, there was no suspect taken into custody. Police were able to determine that this was a false alarm, and the manhunt tonight continues, Donna.
All right, we'll come back to you in a little bit, Heather, for the latest on the victims, those who were killed, their families, and of course those who were injured. But we want to go to Mike Armstrong now, who's in Regina outside RCMP headquarters. Mike, you just spoke to the Saskatchewan RCMP commanding officer. What did she tell you?
Yeah, we spoke to Assistant Commissioner Rhonda Blackmore. She's the commanding officer here for Saskatchewan RCMP. Blackmore said this morning they had multiple reports that Sanderson was spotted on the James Smith Cree Nation. Officers were dispatched and that the alert was issued. After searching the area, the report was deemed to be unfounded and that alert was lifted. Which brings us back to the most recent sighting, which would be Sunday in the eastern part of this city, Regina. Police say it was credible, that sighting. Sanderson in a black Nissan Rogue, apparently with another person. The head of the Saskatchewan RCMP still says they have reason to trust that sighting, but it's now being more than 48 hours. Sanderson could have moved, and she's basically saying that anybody in this part of the country should be vigilant.
Until we have a resolution to this incident by having Myles Sanderson in custody, there's still a threat. He has shown a significant propensity for violence. He has committed incredibly traumatic and violent crimes in James Smith Cree Nation and Weldon, and we want to make sure that the public remains vigilant, because we cannot say what his thought process is right now or what his behavior might be right now. We want to make sure that everyone remains vigilant until this individual's caught.
And I take it that's why you took no chances with the alert this morning.
That is exactly why we did that.
Now, the police investigation into those crimes continues, but there are also being questions raised on another front. Global News has obtained court documents outlining Myles Sanderson's very troubled criminal past, and there are now questions being raised as to whether the parole board may have made a mistake releasing Sanderson from his latest sentence early.
At the time of this attack, Myles Sanderson was already on the run from police. He'd been released from prison but had stopped meeting with his caseworker. Since May 27th, he was officially designated as unlawfully at large. Now, his criminal history is extensive and violent. Sanderson has 59 criminal convictions since turning 18, and he's only 31 years old. According to court documents, there are multiple recent incidents. In one, Sanderson threatened an ex-girlfriend to the point children had to be hidden in a bathtub. In another, he beat a man and forced him to commit an armed robbery. And in another, he attacked two brothers, stabbing them with a fork, and beat another man unconscious who had just been walking by. When Sanderson was arrested in June of 2018, he assaulted an officer and told police they were going to have to shoot him. He was sentenced to 4 years and 4 months, but was released in August 2021 on statutory release. It didn't go well. Sanderson was caught lying to his caseworker, and in November, his release was suspended. Well, he fought to have it reinstated, and earlier this year, won. That's why he was out. The parole board issued a decision on Sanderson February 1st of this year. It lays out a serious history of drug and alcohol abuse that started at just 12 years old. It says his criminal history is, quote, very concerning, including the use of violence and weapons, and his history of domestic violence. However, the parole board found he would not present an undue risk and that freeing him would contribute to the protection of society by facilitating his reintegration.
Now, there were several conditions to Sanderson's release. No alcohol, no drugs. He was to follow a treatment plan. He couldn't have any contact with several specific people or anyone he knew that was involved in criminal activity. But the board said it was, quote, satisfied that your risk is manageable in the community. Donna?
All right, Mike Armstrong in Regina tonight. Thanks. Well, while this manhunt continues to unfold, friends and family of those killed on Sunday are grieving. A lot of people on the James Smith Cree Nation are not speaking to the media. The leadership of the nation has told them to avoid the media. Others, though, are making a point of seeking out the media and telling them a story about what they say they hope will highlight the deep-rooted problems that may have contributed to this mass killing. Heather Yourex-West has been speaking to some of them. Heather.
Yeah, the family of one of the victims say that the James Smith Cree Nation needs help. They say that the problems of drugs and alcohol addictions fueled by trauma are now fueling violence. And across Canada, the James Smith Cree Nation is not alone in this.
Down this road on the James Smith Cree Nation, the community is privately dealing with a collective trauma.
My sister was lying in a driveway with her friend and a young boy. They were all dead.
Ivor and Daryl Burns lost their sister Gloria in Sunday's attack, when it's believed 2 community members, brothers Damien and Myles Sanderson, began a series of assaults so vicious 10 people were killed and another 18 injured.
My sister worked at the health clinic. She was a frontline worker. She got called out. She got called out on a crisis call, and that's when she met her demise.
The battle we're fighting here is with alcoholism and drug use. And when we're talking of, and even that is just a symptom of the residential school syndrome.
Damien and Myles Sanderson were well known to the Burns family. They are in fact related. But Daryl Burns says the brothers were caught up in a cycle of intergenerational trauma that led them to frequent drug and alcohol abuse.
You see a lot of our people angry. Anger is a secondary emotion. The primary emotion is hurt and pain. And there's a lot of hurt and pain in our communities.
On Alberta's Siksika Nation, Buck Breaker says the problems are all too familiar. Trauma passed down from grandparents to parents to children, fueling a cycle of drug and alcohol addiction and domestic violence.
We need programs and services for our people. The moment they say they want help, we got to have something there for them. For men, we don't have enough programs and services for men. Males need to heal.
Still, there is some hope remaining here. After losing his mother, Gloria, Dylan Burns thought too about turning to drugs and alcohol to cope. But instead, he says he did what his mom would have wanted. He danced. This is a healing grass dance he performed at the Wahpeton Dakota Nation powwow near Prince Albert. This time to deliberately break the cycle of trauma and violence for his family and his people back home.
And we have an update to the people injured in this attack. Of the 17 that were admitted to hospital, the Saskatchewan health authorities say that 7 have now been discharged, 4 remain in critical condition. And we also will be hearing from the James Smith Cree Nation on Thursday, Donna.
All right, Heather Yourex-West, thanks for this. To other news, there is more controversy surrounding the public inquiry into the Nova Scotia massacre. Today, the Mass Casualty Commission heard testimony from Constable Greg Wiley. He's an RCMP officer who visited the gunman frequently over several years. Wiley denied investigating a 2010 complaint the gunman threatened to kill his own parents. He also says he does not recall a 2011 bulletin warning police the gunman expressed desire to kill a police officer. Commission order did prevent the media from showing the testimony today for what it called personal health considerations. A lawyer for victims' families says that just further undermines public confidence in the inquiry. A new chapter in British politics. Coming up, the latest Prime Minister's first day on the job and the pledges she's making. Welcome back to Saskatchewan. The interim leader of the federal Conservative Party, Candice Bergen, has announced she will not run in the next federal election. Bergen made the announcement in a Facebook post. She served as the party's interim leader since February, when Aaron O'Toole was ousted by his caucus. Bergen was first elected to the House of Commons in 2008. She says she'll serve out her term as the MP for the Manitoba riding of Portage-Lisgar. The Conservatives will choose their next leader at a convention on Saturday. And the UK has a new Prime Minister. Liz Truss is now in charge. And after meeting with the Queen, she wasted little time appointing cabinet ministers she wants to work with. The outgoing Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, shared his plans for his future as he stepped away from Downing Street.
I am now like one of those booster rockets that has fulfilled its function, and I will now be gently re-entering the atmosphere and splashing down invisibly in some remote and obscure corner of the Pacific.
Never lost for words. As Crystal Gamansing reports, as Johnson departs, his successor is inheriting a big portfolio of problems.
It's out with the old and in with the new. A lashing rain, however, forced Prime Minister Liz Truss' motorcade to keep driving, hoping for a break in the weather, allowing for a more suitable arrival at 10 Downing Street. The forecast foreshadowing the challenges she faces.
I am confident that together we can ride out the storm.
Her first speech to the nation included a pledge to cut taxes, fund the National Health Service, and take action this week to address skyrocketing energy bills. But people aren't convinced. A YouGov poll finds 2/3 of Britons have little to no confidence in Truss to tackle the cost of living.
We'll get spades in the ground to make sure people are not facing unaffordable energy bills. And we will also make sure that we are building hospitals, schools, roads and broadband.
Truss is the third woman to be invited by the Queen to form government and Her Majesty's 15th Prime Minister. Her 14th, Boris Johnson, pushed out in part after being found to have repeatedly lied about hosting and attending parties during the pandemic. Johnson, always a performer, harkened back to Roman times in his farewell.
Like Cincinnatus, I am returning to my plough. And I will be offering this government nothing but the most fervent support.
The plough in this case, likely the backbenches. He'll be joined by another former leader there, Theresa May. They will both be in Parliament Wednesday when Truss stands for her first Prime Minister's questions. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Canada's healthcare crisis continues. Ahead, do private companies hold a key to relief? Welcome back to Saskatchewan. The mass stabbing here on Sunday further tested this province's already stressed healthcare system. A code orange mass casualty event was declared at Saskatoon's Royal University Hospital. 3 patients ended up being flown there by air ambulance for emergency care. Last week, the head of Saskatchewan's Nurses Union warned the hospital was experiencing what she called a dire staffing crisis. She gave the example of August 24th, when the emergency room was operating 200% over capacity, more than 90 people waiting to access 31 available beds. What's happening at Royal University mirrors the staffing crisis in other hospitals across Canada. Many ERs have been temporarily closed, and the state of Canadian healthcare has reignited the long-running debate about privatization. Jamie Morocker has more on what a system with more options could mean for patients.
Vancouver surgeon Dr. Brian Day isn't shy about sharing his opinion on Canadian healthcare.
Canada's health system is performing badly.
The clinic owner has spent decades crusading for a parallel private system to ease stress on our public hospitals and save lives, he says.
The promise was that we would have a universal system where everyone was treated, but people are dying on wait lists.
Just last month, a BC court justice agreed the two-tier ban in that province imposes suffering on patients stuck in the public queue. But as it stands, medical services offered under the Canada Health Act cannot also be covered by private insurance. And the mere mention of privatization creates conflict and political polarization.
We just can't, as a province, keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
The national healthcare crisis has some leaders in Ontario, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Quebec exploring relationships with private companies, but it's unclear in exactly what capacity and at whose cost. In Germany, citizens who have the money can opt out of the country's system for substitutive coverage. A popular choice in Australia is to pay for insurance to access private facilities. And even the UK, which has a revered universal healthcare system, offers private options. Still, these countries aren't immune to post-pandemic backlogs or wait times.
Privatization of anything would make no difference in the emergency room.
Public health physician Dr. Michael Ratchless wants to see Canada focus on optimizing existing facilities, like this, one of the largest surgical centers in North America that sits just outside downtown Toronto.
We've got the solutions in the public sector, but when people don't hear about them, if you don't know what's on the menu, you can't ask for it.
Managing patient levels should start outside the ER, explains this Harvard health expert.
The nature of those peaks and valleys are elective, scheduled admissions. So if you smooth those peaks and valleys, you can dramatically improve your operation.
With the immediate goal of alleviating burnout, increasing retention, and improving patient care. Jamie Morocker, Global News, Toronto.
A new report by the Alzheimer's Society of Canada found over 1 million Canadians could be diagnosed with dementia by 2030. That almost doubles the number of cases in Canada right now, and the number could triple by 2050. In many cases, we know family members are caring for their loved ones. The study says in the next 30 years, those roles will equal about 700,000 full-time jobs. The best way to advance is to prevent as many cases as possible. That requires reducing risk factors such as substance abuse, traumatic injuries, and pollution. The study authors admit this requires individual as well as community and government support to succeed. Rain and cooler temperatures bringing some relief to crews fighting the wildfire burning in Jasper National Park. The fire, now mapped at an area of about 6,000 hectares, is down from about 8,000 hectares yesterday. It's burning about 16 kilometers north of the resort town of Jasper. At this point, there are no evacuation orders or alerts in place, but visitors are being asked to reconsider their plans. The flames have damaged power lines into town. There's no word on when electricity will be fully restored. A community's grief. Next, we speak to the people of Weldon and the aftermath of the senseless violence here. Welcome back to Weldon, Saskatchewan, a community on edge. Weldon is just a pretty tiny prairie village. Less than 200 people live here. Everyone knows the man who was murdered here outside his home. And though there's still plenty of prairie friendliness here, people are understandably nervous. The idea this tiny village would ever be in the media spotlight is as foreign to people here as locking their front doors. The murder of a neighbor in what's believed to be a random attack has changed everything.
I wonder if he actually ever left the area.
Tamara Shabaga goes to church here and is doing some painting today.
It could have been anybody in town.
Like everyone here, she knew Wes Peterson.
I was supposed to work yesterday here and I didn't come, obviously, because I was a little nervous about it. But I thought, you know what, life goes on. We have to not live in fear and trust the Lord that He'll look after us.
That it happened here feels unreal. Peterson's niece, who didn't want to go on camera, said she's still trying to wrap her head around his murder and the fact that one of the suspects is still out there.
They killed an innocent man for nothing.
Ruby Works says she's nervous too, but wants the world to know her friend was a good man. We're not seeing anybody out and about in the town today.
No, because they're terrified.
Because there's a fear that the other brother might come back.
The other brother might come back and pick another random house and do it again. We all fear this.
And for good reason. While Tamara Shabaga was painting the church, another emergency alert. A suspected sighting of the wanted man on the James Smith First Nation. That's just a half-hour drive from Weldon. That prompted Tamara to think twice about leaving the church open. She's locked the doors. And what will make the community feel more at ease? What will make you feel more at ease?
They catch the brother and put him behind bars.
And late today, the RCMP said that suspected sighting on the James Smith Cree Nation was a false alarm. The suspect has not been found. The manhunt still underway. That is Global National for this Tuesday from Saskatchewan, a province that remains on high alert. Thanks for watching.